Good evening, and thank you for attending this public scoping meeting for the McMullin Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency's McMullin On-Farm Flood Capture Expansion Project. My name is David Monroe, and I will be hosting tonight's meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to present you, the members of the public, with an overview of the proposed project, the environmental analysis that is being prepared, and opportunities for public involvement. We'd like to begin with some meeting logistics, for which I will hand over to our meeting moderator, Rebecca Quist.
Thank you, David. For those who need Spanish translation for tonight's public scoping session, we have an interpreter available that you can access using your Zoom menu. So I'd like to introduce Mary with Linguistica Interpretation Services to provide instructions in Spanish on how to access the Spanish translation for the evening. Mary.
Gracias, Rebeca. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a esta junta pública de alcance. Vamos a tener interpretación simultánea disponible. Si está utilizando una computadora, va a haber un globito en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Le va a dar la opción de interpretación, el canal de español. Elijan el canal de español, pongan en mudo el audio original y listo para escuchar la interpretación en español. Si están usando un teléfono móvil, toquen su pantalla, van a ver 3 puntitos en la parte inferior de su pantalla, elijan interpretación de idiomas, van a elegir el canal de español, silenciar el audio original y listo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I'll go ahead and just give a few moments for folks to join the translation audio if needed. And next slide, please, Crystal. For all who are participating in tonight's scoping session, we wanted to let you know that your video and microphones are turned off and will remain off for the session. We also wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on MAGSA's YouTube channel and website as soon as possible following the conclusion of the event. We'll also send a link to the recording to our email distribution list. If you're not already on that list and you'd like to be added, you can visit our website, www.mcmullinarea.org, to sign up. And to keep the flow of information throughout the duration of the presentation this evening, questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation. If any questions arise during the presentation, feel free to type those into the Q&A box feature. You can find it at the bottom of your Zoom menu. Those questions will be read aloud and answered again at the end of the presentation. And because this is the first day of the public comment period for the scoping session, comments from the public will be taken and recorded. Near the end of tonight's presentation, we will open up a dedicated time for comment submittal from you, members of the public. Those comments will be collected via the Q&A feature available on your Zoom menu, the same one that you'll submit your questions to. You can also submit your comments to. We'll make a note to verify we received your comment and it has been recorded. And more details on how to use the Q&A and how to submit a comment will be provided towards the end of this evening's presentation.
Thank you, Rebecca. We'd like to start the presentation tonight by having the team that is developing and analyzing this project introduce themselves. Our team is comprised of staff from the McMullin Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency, also known as MAGSA, staff from USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, from Bashan and Associates, and from Tetra Tech. I'd like to start with staff from the McMullin Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Matt, would you please start?
Yes, my name is Matt Hurley. I currently serve as the General Manager of the McMullin Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency, or MAGSA. I also will be serving as the Project Director for this particular project. I'll turn it over to Crystal.
I am Crystal Tufunction. I work for the Kings River Conservation District in their External Affairs Department, and we provide support and outreach for the McMullin Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
And I'm Rebecca Quist. I'm Crystal's teammate at Kings River Conservation District, helping support outreach on MAGSA and on this project.
Thank you. The lead federal agency for this project is Natural Resources Conservation Service, also known as NRCS, represented by Steve Hill. Steve?
Good evening. I'm trying to turn my camera on. Doesn't work. Oh, work all of a sudden. Yes, I'm Steve Hill. I'm a watershed planner. And my main interest with this project is to work with the rest of the team to develop a watershed plan, which includes a NEPA analysis to make this project eligible for federal funding for implementation.
Thank you, Steve. As I mentioned before, my name is David Monroe. I work for an environmental consulting company called Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech is assisting MAGSA and NRCS in preparation of the NEPA and CEQA documents that are being prepared for this project, as well as the public involvement tasks. My role is the project manager for the environmental analysis. I'm joined by my colleague, Sarah Beck, who is the NEPA and CEQA lead. Sarah?
Good evening. I am an environmental scientist and planner with Tetra Tech, and I will be helping support MAGSA as we develop the environmental compliance documents for this project.
Thank you, Sarah. And the lead technical scientist on this project is Dr. Philip Bashan from Bashan and Associates. Philip?
Hi, I'm Philip Bashan from Bashan Associates. I have worked on developing management practices regarding agricultural water quality and hydrology challenges over the past 25 years. Since 2010, I've pioneered much of the on-farm recharge work in the San Joaquin Valley, and primarily been focusing on developing and advancing the McMullin projects. Under that effort, I'm providing technical leadership on the McMullin projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. So I wanted to briefly go over tonight's agenda. We'd like to start with a description of MAGSA, including its formation, composition, and goals. During the purpose and need discussion, we'll provide information about the goals of the project and the reason that MAGSA is proposing to implement the project. We'll follow with a description of the proposed project, including construction and operations features. And then we'll describe opportunities for the public to participate in the planning and environmental process, including the schedule for preparation of the NEPA and CEQA documents and the release of the documents for public review. Later in the presentation, we'll share the tentative schedule for preparation of these documents. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor for your questions or comments. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all discussion will become part of the public record. At this time, I'd like to ask MAGSA General Manager Matt Hurley to describe MAGSA. Matt?
Thank you, David. Hello again, folks. I see on the list a lot of friendly faces, but a few folks that I've not known before. So I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a little background on MAGSA. MAGSA is a public agency who's tasked with sustainably managing groundwater on behalf of a fairly diverse set of stakeholders and landowners within its service area. The goals of the agency are to create a viable, successful groundwater sustainability agency in compliance with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014. As a public agency, we are guided by the pursuit of actions and projects that serve our constituents' best interests for now and into the future. As one of many GSAs in the region, our goal is to cooperate to the greatest extent possible with the other GSAs, in addition to public agencies and other organizations, to successfully implement projects and programs that achieve our collective goal of sustainability by the year 2040. Finally, our big goal is to develop a long-term strategy for sustainability. We developed a groundwater sustainability plan, or GSP, that outlines how we plan to achieve groundwater sustainability that includes water acquisition, infrastructure development, and financing in the form of landowner assessments and an aggressive strategy to pursue and secure grant funding to push our plans forward, just like this project. Next slide, please. MAGSA is governed by a 5-member board. We are a joint powers agency comprised of 3 different public agencies. One is Mid-Valley Water District, another is Raisin City. And then there's a large group of landowners who fall within the category of a wide area, which come under the umbrella of the County of Fresno. The board is made up of one Fresno member, one landowner wide area member, 2 Raisin City board members, and 1 Mid-Valley Water District board member. We meet on a monthly basis to handle the business of the agency. Next slide, please. As you can see on the chart here, MAGSA sits to the left bottom of the chart. The overall watershed is set forth on the graphic. Our overall watershed is approximately 373,000 acres as indicated here, reaching from the crest of the Sierra Nevada to the east down to the valley floor on the west. MAGSA, in particular the current project area, are found at the lowest part of this watershed. Surface water from snow melt flows west and is diverted, appropriated by numerous irrigation and flood control facilities before it reaches the valley floor. Unfortunately, MAGSA lands contain virtually no surface water bodies, and irrigators rely mostly on pumped groundwater. The proposed project would affect only about 10% of the total watershed as shown in the figure. I think that's all I have. Let me pass it back to you, David.
Okay, thank you, Matt. This project is subject to analysis under both the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Both NEPA and CEQA documents include a purpose and need statement, which is developed to provide the public the context under which a project is being proposed. So to provide an overview of the purpose and need for this project, I'd like to turn this over to Sarah Beck. Sarah?
All right, thank you, David. So the project that we're going to talk with you this evening is relatively complex, and it's intended to serve several different purposes, including agricultural water management, sustainable groundwater management, water quality management, and flood damage reduction. There will be 2 different environmental analysis documents produced. David just mentioned that, one for CEQA and one for NEPA. Each of these documents will have a distinct purpose and need statements that are crafted to reflect each decision-making agency's unique authority and the focus of the funding awards secured from each. So the NEPA analysis will be focused on agricultural water management and groundwater recharge, and the CEQA analysis will be focused on stormwater management. But as we talk about the project this evening, we're going to discuss the purpose and need for it in a broad sense. Next slide, please. Both sets of environmental analysis will require us to compare the impacts of the proposed project to the impacts of doing nothing. So the first alternative you see here is the future without project, or the no action alternative. And that's just what it is. This is what happens if MAGSA does not undertake any of the proposed project. So under this alternative, there would be no expansion of the current on-farm recharge infrastructure. Agricultural water would not be managed any more so than it presently is, and there would be no action to address flood damage. The second alternative is the proposed action, and this is what we're going to talk about in more depth this evening. The proposed action was developed to address the purposes and needs for the project that we talked about in the previous slide. David?
Thank you, Sarah. During this segment, Dr. Philip Bichon will provide a general description of the actions that will be implemented to construct and operate the project. Phil?
Thanks, David. So this project, in short, is going to be capturing and recharging flood and storm flows onto agricultural and farmlands to recharge the groundwater aquifer and help with groundwater sustainability. That and reducing flood risk has been a driving goal of the McMullin projects since we began working on them in about 2010. This slide shows the groundwater profile across MAGSA from the east, and this is from fall 2020. Land elevations throughout most of MAGSA are about 190 to 200 feet above sea level. You can see the groundwater profile is going from a high of 120 feet above sea level in the east down to minus 50 feet below sea level in the west. and that forms this groundwater depression, which is essentially underlying MAGSA and the McMullin projects. So this represents long-term chronic and significant overdraft in the region. And groundwater depths, as you can see here, have gotten at times to be greater than 230 feet below the ground surface. MAGSA has in their groundwater sustainability plan identifies actions to help achieve groundwater sustainability in the region. And this project is one of those actions that's identified. Next slide. This map repeats some of this stuff, information that was provided by Matt Hurley. You can see Mid-Valley Water District up at on the northern area of MAGSA, and you can see Raven City Water District down in the southeastern part of MAGSA. You can also see on this slide the McMullin projects, phase 1 area, and the expansion projects. These were the phase 1 project was constructed with some foundational infrastructure such that it could divert water from the Kings River onto phase 1, and the intent that it could be later expanded into subsequent phases. So phase 1 was completed in 2021, and it has a capacity to divert 150 cubic feet per second of available flood or stormwater from the Kings River at the James bypass, and it can distribute that water over about 5,000 acres of private farmland for on-farm recharge. The expansion project, which is to the east and to the north of phase 1, adds over 40,000 acres to the McMullin projects. It increases the diversion and recharge capacity by 300 cubic feet per second, or CFS, such that the total diversion and capture and recharge capacity for the entire McMullin projects upon completion of this expansion project would be 450 CFS. And it would divert flows from the James bypass using the phase 1 infrastructure, which includes main conveyance canals, and it would divert that into main conveyance canals on the expansion project, and then onto distribution canals, which we have termed as laterals, for distribution onto farmland that's employed on the on-farm recharge program. Next slide. This slide provides you an overview of the phase 1 project, which has been completed this year. The phase 1 project has won a lot of awards, and they're shown on this slide. It was paid through a DWR grant and to Kings River Conservation District, and there was additional funds locally matched for the project. It includes foundational infrastructure, as I talked about, such that it would have a capacity of diverting 500 CFS. And that infrastructure includes a bypass, turnout off the James bypass, which is at the bottom of that yellow line on the southwestern part of the project. It includes, that yellow line is a main canal, and you can see 2 other bolded yellow lines, and those are also primary canals for the phase 1 project. It has a pump station to pump water out into those canals, and then it crosses under McMullin Crossing. As I stated earlier, it's designed, the project itself is designed to take 150 CFS within the phase 1 area and distribute that onto permanent flood easement lands. There's about 475 acres of those, and those are shown in gray, as well as another 1,100 acres of farmland for dual use for farming and flood recharge. Phase 1 included a lot of other work to get to where it was. It had CEQA done for it. It had permitting. It had legal agreements among various partners and agencies. in addition to this significant infrastructure. Next slide. This slide is really just provided to show you the scale of the project. And people can see this if they go down a McMullin grade towards the James Bypass. This is looking off the turnout off the James Bypass. This canal was completed in early 2019. I mean, early 2019. And you can see on the left, it's empty. It's shown here looking out from the turnout. And then on the right, it went into on the left, it went into operation in 2019 as well during that wet year. And here it was filled up and ready to distribute water into the phase 1 area. Next slide. This shows you, this describes the operation that's planned for the expansion project. As I've stated earlier, it's going to increase the capture and recharge capacity from 150 CFS that you are able to obtain with phase 1 to 450 CFS through a 300 CFS increase. It will receive flood water and storm water flows from the phase 1 system. It will have a main conveyance and a lateral system to distribute flood water onto farmlands that are participating in the on-farm recharge program. The main conveyance system is shown here. The laterals are not. The laterals will be placed based on the expected farmlands that will be involved in on-farm recharge. And those farmlands, as well as any along the main conveyance route or who have access to that, could be utilizing this water for either in lieu recharge or direct recharge. We expect that this project may require up to 3,000 acres of farmland employed in the on-farm recharge program to have sufficient capacity to recharge the 300 CFS of flood flows planned for this project. Next slide. This is the same picture, but it shows, in it I described the infrastructure. So you can see the main conveyance system is canal system is about 12 miles long. It has a 300 CFS design capacity. The floral pump station, which is labeled here, would be upgraded to include additional pumps to pump water eastward. It will have booster pumps. We've identified 4 booster pumps currently, but 3 are shown here. And it will have road crossings. There will be 3 county road crossings and about a dozen farm road crossings. The lateral system is not shown, but it will have sufficient capacity to distribute flood flows to participating landowners in the on-farm recharge program. We expect up to about 4 miles of laterals be constructed under this project. And then the on-farm recharge program will be employed on farmlands who will participate in an equipped type program to help support their funding of any modifications or improvements they might need to make, and they will be given information on appropriate practices to implement, whether they're structural practices such as implementing pumps or surface water conveyance systems, or doing land work versus or non-structural such as management practices. And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. As we mentioned previously, this project is being evaluated under both NEPA and CEQA. I'd like to turn it over to Sarah to describe some of the goals of NEPA and CEQA and a bit about the reasons for why NEPA and CEQA are both being implemented here. Sarah?
All right, thanks, Dave. So we're doing 2 sets of environmental analysis because of the funding sources, and we'll describe that in more detail in just a moment. But to explain, first of all, NEPA is a federal law. It stands for the National Environmental Policy Act, And CEQA is a law that's unique to the state of California. That one stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. So even though they're two separate laws, the three main goals are the same, and you can see them here. So both laws require someone who is proposing a project to consider the environmental consequences of that project, to inform the public, and to allow for public participation. So both NEPA and CEQA seek to analyze the impacts of a proposed project on both the natural and the human environment. Next slide, please. So we're talking about both of them tonight because they're both triggered for this particular project because funding is coming from a variety of sources. Because the state of California is funding a portion of the work through a stormwater grant, the CEQA analysis must be completed to meet those requirements. And because the NRCS is also funding a portion of the work, NEPA analysis must be completed. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. Here to discuss the NRCS programs under which this project would be implemented, we have Steve Hill. Steve?
Good evening again. Yes, our primary interest is with the Small Watershed Program, also known as the Watershed Protection Program. And the Watershed Plan will lead to a proposal to provide implementation funds for the main line of the canal. So that is what would be covered under the authority of the Small Watershed Program. As part of context, we thought I would explain that the on-farm recharge component will also be supported by another program, which is covered with a different environmental document, the Environmental Quality Protection Program. And with that, we will provide financial and technical assistance to interested landowners who wish to set up their farm fields in order to receive and manage their flood flows.
Thank you, Steve. In the course of preparing the NEPA and CEQA studies, we're evaluating anywhere from 11 to 15 distinct resource categories. Some of the primary items that we are evaluating in those documents are listed here. This is certainly not an exhaustive list of the resources that we're evaluating, but we put them up there because they are some of our primary areas of consideration. So, for example, due to ongoing concerns with air quality in the Central and San Joaquin valleys, we're preparing air quality modeling to make sure that both the construction and operations of this project will be consistent with the requirements of the Federal Clean Air Act and implementation of the Clean Air Act by the state of California and the Regional Air Quality Resources Board. Because the project is, the proposed project is located in and around the former Tulare Lake bed, which is known to be rich in cultural resources. We have an archaeologist on our team to perform due diligence regarding the potential for cultural resources to occur and to be affected by the project, and to prepare a incidental discovery plan in the event that cultural resources are encountered during construction. Of course, because this is a water resources project, we're taking a very close look at potential effects to both surface water and groundwater. So we're evaluating both water quality and water supply, and making sure that this project is going to be consistent with Clean Water Act requirements and meet the goals and objectives for which it's being designed. Because it's occurring under such a large area, approximately 40,000 acres, a large part of our evaluation is making sure that this project is consistent with land use regulations, both from the state, from the Fresno County General Plan, and from area zoning regulations. In the lower left, we have the photo there is representative of our awareness that agriculture is the backbone of this community, and the project has to be consistent with agricultural practices and expectations of the agricultural community. So we are evaluating potential effects for to prime ag land and various various classes of agricultural lands, and also ensuring that the project is not going to result in any loss of soils, and referencing past studies that show that these types of projects have no adverse effect on crop health or crop yields. We're evaluating, again, going back to land use, we're evaluating to ensure that this project would not divide existing communities, and that this project would be occurring only under easements signed by property owners and will not have a long-term effect on ag operations in the project area. Part of the CEQA NEPA analysis is looking at the project through the lens of policy and regulation, and ensuring that the proposed action is consistent with any relevant environmental and socioeconomic regulations or executive orders. So, for example, we are evaluating this project to ensure consistency with the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, NEPA, CEQA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and numerous other state, federal, and local policies and regulations. To ensure that to evaluate the project's cost-benefit ratio, we're preparing a standalone economic evaluation, which we anticipate will show that the project will have a net benefit in terms of economic payback to the community. And of course, one of our primary areas of evaluation is the potential for effects to the surrounding community. So we're evaluating any potential effects to groundwater quality, groundwater access, and flood risk management. Next slide, please. Scoping, this process that we're starting today, is critical for both NEPA and CEQA. Scoping describes the process of consulting with other state, federal, and tribal governments, as well as members of the public. Scoping it helps us to refine the proposed action, to identify the potential issues, and identify interested and affected persons. The results of scoping are used to clarify the public involvement methods that we'll implement for the rest of the project, refine the issues to be analyzed, and explore possible alternatives and the probable environmental effects of those alternatives. So for federal agencies and under NEPA, scoping is a requirement, and some of the language from the federal regulation that dictates that federal agencies will do scoping is listed here. And we chose this quote. We chose this part of the federal regulation because it shows that agencies need to do scoping at an early phase of the project, which is the phase we're at right now. It needs to be an open process that is available to all members of the public and all stakeholders. And it has to be a process that can allow the members of the public, regulated agencies, and other stakeholders to help determine the scope of issues that are going to be included in the NEPA and CEQA analysis. So scoping is a very important component of this analysis and of the entire planning process, and that's why we're very thankful for those of you who joined us tonight. Next slide, please. As you're thinking about this project, we wanted to just bring up a few things that you might want to think about. The 5 questions that we've listed here are those that come up regularly during scoping, not just for projects like this, but for all kinds of projects that are being evaluated under NEPA and CEQA. So the first question comes down to the potential for the project to achieve its goals and objectives. Is the project fully designed, or is it designed to the point where it can be fully evaluated in a NEPA and CEQA document? Are there any concerns that the project may not achieve its goals and objectives? The second item kind of works two ways. What are the most important environmental concerns? Well, we've identified a number of areas to focus on in the environmental documentation, but those are preliminary. And when I say this works two ways, we're asking you to tell us what you think the most important environmental concerns are, and we will work that into the NEPA and CEQA documentation, and if needed, we'll address that in the project designs. Is there any controversy? So we can't say, because we're just starting the scoping process now. To date, we haven't heard anything that indicates that this is a controversial project. We believe it's being designed for that the goals and objectives are such that it would have a net positive benefit to the agricultural community and to the surrounding community. But there's no guarantee that everyone sees it that way. And we, if you as members of the public have ideas about how this project might be done differently, this is the time to make those suggestions. This is the process by where we will look at areas of controversy and address them in the environmental documentation. The next item regarding environmental laws, we've listed several of them, and that will all of the pertinent laws that apply to this project will be evaluated. As far as when the decision needs to be made, well, we're not making any decisions before the end of the scoping process. So the scoping process officially starts today, June 30th, and it goes for 30 days. So it's going through July 30th. Once the scoping process is completed, we'll look at all of your comments and address all of your questions. And those comments and questions will help us to formulate the decisions that we need to move forward, both with the next phases of design and with the environmental documentation. Next slide, please. So this is a very general schedule. As I mentioned, the public scoping period will be going on until July 30th. The CEQA document, the draft CEQA document, will be circulated for public review in September. So it will be out for a 30-day comment period, during which we will post it to MAGSA's website and inform everyone who commented that the document is ready for review. At the end of that 30-day comment period, we'll take your comments and see if there are areas in the CEQA document that need to be revised. The watershed plan and the NEPA component are on a somewhat slower timeline, since they are following a somewhat different process than the components in the CEQA document. We anticipate having that plan out for public review in winter of 2022. That will be out for a 45-day comment period. So we hope to finish up the CEQA documentation by the end of 2021 and finish the NEPA documentation by summer of 2022. Next slide, please. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Crystal and Rebecca to discuss the possibilities for public participation. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, if you'd like to submit a question or comment now, please do so using the Q&A feature on your Zoom. Hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen, and you will see your Zoom menu pop up. Select the Q&A button and type your question or comment and hit send. We will see your question and respond live. If you are providing a comment, we will acknowledge and record your comment. Tonight is the start of the comment period for the scoping session, so we will be taking comments this evening. You can submit your comments again using the Q&A feature. Now and any time during the 30-day comment period, you can submit your comments a number of ways. We want to keep this process convenient for you so you can engage with us however you are comfortable. You can submit comments online at the link www.mcmullinarea.org/OFR, by email at comments@mcmullinarea.org, or you can mail or hand deliver to the MAGSA office during business hours. The address is indicated on the screen. We want you, the public, to stay engaged with the McMullin expansion project. The fastest way to stay up to date is by signing up for our email list. You will receive meeting notices, program updates, and more information on MAGSA's work on projects in the area. You can sign up at mcmullinarea.org. We are also active on social media if you'd like to stay up to date that way. We post articles, videos, and more, and hope you'll give us a follow to stay in touch. Our social media accounts are indicated on the screen. We are available to take your comments and questions throughout the 30-day scoping session comment period and thereafter. If you'd like to contact us, you can do so on our website by giving us a call or sending us an email to the address listed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. I'd like to thank all the presenters tonight. And I hope that this presentation has given everyone that's participated tonight a good overview of the project. We really appreciate your attendance at the meeting tonight, and we look forward to receiving your comments on the project. At this point, we're going to open up the floor to your comments and questions and respond as best we can. Thank you.
Okay, so we have one question that has been submitted, David. The question is, it seems that the water will be diverted for on-farm recharge only. Why not develop dedicated recharge basins off the laterals, either at the district, GSA, or grower level?
To address that question, to begin with, I'm going to ask Phil Bashan. Phil?
Thanks, David. This project is funded as an on-farm recharge project. It's funded through both the NRCS and the state water grant for on-farm recharge. But it does not preclude the use of basins. I think that's we weren't clear about that. So recharge basins could receive water. I think that the advantages of on-farm recharge over basins is that they're flexible, and it's flexible and more expandable. It empowers growers, and I guess those are the key two main points. But in putting together the laterals, we will keep in mind if there's any recharge basins that we will be developing under MAGSA for accepting water. I don't know if Matt Hurley has anything else you'd want to add to that.
Just a brief addition to that. Obviously, basins, by their nature, require the productive agricultural lands to possibly be retired or otherwise reoperated. This way, on-farm recharge allows for maximum recharge capability while still providing full productive agricultural acreage.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? All right. Thank you, Matt and Phil. Rebecca, further questions?
Oh, we just got a question in. So the question is, what would the percentage of water split between the grower and the GSA be?
Again, I'm going to ask Phil to address the question to begin with.
David, I think Matt is the person to handle this as this is a MAGSA question.
Okay, Matt?
Simply put, it's too early in the process to know. Part of the negotiations that will occur with each of the landowners relative to their participation in the project will be satisfactory terms to be met with those landowners as we work out those agreements. So those will be determined as we go along. We have no particular preconceptions about that one way or another.
Thank you, Matt. Rebecca, further questions?
I'm not seeing anything as of now.
Okay.
Okay, we do have a question. How would the potential impact on groundwater quality be monitored?
I can answer that in a general sense, but I believe Phil would be the person to answer from a more technical standpoint. Phil, can you address that to begin with?
Yes. So the main issue on managing for water quality will be managing our lands and our practices. So MAGSA has some groundwater quality monitoring and hydrology monitoring that are part of the GSA, the GSP, for the purpose of protecting groundwater during ground management of its groundwater. But this project, we will, in our practices, one of the practices that we identify is appropriate nutrient management, salt management on farms that are employed in on-farm recharge, and also that you conducted on appropriate soil types and past and plots with appropriate past agricultural practices. And so those are all part of the BMP program that we're developing. We've developed some of that under the flood flow capture plan under phase 1.
Thank you, Phil. I would also add that in combination with the CEQA initial study that we're preparing, we will be preparing a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, which will pull together all of the mitigation and monitoring requirements that are identified in the initial study, and it'll list each of those measures along with the entity that is responsible for implementing those monitoring or mitigation measures, a schedule for when they need to occur, and a process for reporting the results of mitigation and monitoring.
And David, I'll add one more thing to this discussion. Under the first McMullin project, phase 1, we also had CEQA conducted on that, and there was and water quality actions was one of the outcomes of that, and one of the mitigation measures for those potential water quality concerns was development of the flood flow capture plan and the management practices for managing farms employed for on-farm recharge to protect the groundwater underneath them. So this project is bringing a lot of that same approach forward from the first project and the first recommendations out of CEQA.
Thank you, Phil. Rebecca, further questions?
Yes, so we have another question, David. What is the historic interval in years between floodwater flows to be captured?
We will report that in the CEQA document, but for an answer tonight, again, I'm going to refer to Phil.
So the historic interval is every 2 to 3 years on average. It's not like clockwork. You can have several dry years followed by a few wet years. But historically, if you look at the record, it's about every 2.5 years.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, but maybe we can wait a few moments just in case someone is putting together some thoughts or typing.
Sure.
All right, nothing's coming in, David.
Okay. Well, why don't we give it a few more moments? See if anyone else has, if anything else occurs to anyone.
I think we should have gotten Jeopardy music, Rebecca.
I'll make a note, Matt, for next time.
Okay.
All right, so we do have another question, David. This is a highly engineered water system. How do the canal diversions relate to the natural watershed? And if David stepped away, perhaps this is a question for Phil.
It is a highly engineered watershed, and the canal diversions are basically leveraging a lot of that engineering. So we're moving floodwaters off these lands, off these waterways onto lands. You know, potentially you could start getting into these ideas that it's, you know, simulating floodplains and all of that. But it's really just taking advantage of what we have and trying to leverage that to improve our groundwater condition and reduce downstream flood risk. Matt, I don't know if you want to add more to this.
Well, I just wanted to say, that, yes, it is a highly engineered system, but at the same time, we have designed this system 100% acknowledging what the topography of the land is. And when we move the waters out to the east in the main canal, when we do put them into secondary canals and deliver them to landowners' individual parcels, all of that's designed to take advantage of the natural topography and using gravity flow structures and so forth, so that we don't have to engineer it any more than Mother Nature already engineers the flow.
I'd like to add one thing, and I apologize for my delay in getting back to the question. I had a few technical difficulties, but one thing I might add is that during phase one, a few years ago, one of the studies that was performed was a hydraulics and hydrology study that evaluated flood flows or the potential for flood flows in the project area, and gave a and brought in topography and historic flows and the capacity of the various waterways in the area to give a pretty reliable estimation of the potential for the conditions under which flood flows would be available to turn out onto the fields. So this is, even though the commenter is correct, this is a highly engineered area. It's also one that has been studied significantly and under studies like the one I just mentioned.
All right, David, we have another question.
Mhm.
Where do the flood flows from the bypass currently go?
Phil, can I ask you to address that question, or Matt?
I'll let Matt take it.
Sure. The flood flows the North Fork, and absent the diversion by the project from the Kings River bypass, the water continues to move downstream in the bypass, and it goes into the Mendota Pool and conjoins with the San Joaquin River and then flows northward. One of the reasons there's a stormwater or a floodwater management aspect of this is that this not only will help in recharge, but it will also help in taking those high flows off of the river, which will greatly reduce the flood threat to the cities of Mendota and Firebaugh downstream. And so good question, but that's where it all ends up. It all heads for the Delta eventually.
Okay, nothing in the queue, but again, maybe we can just give folks a little bit of time.
Sure.
Perhaps while we're waiting here, if anybody else is coming up with a question, I'll take a quick moment before we reach the end to give a little extra thanks to our tremendous outreach folks, Rebecca and Crystal, and to the professionals who have participated in this webinar. I think it's a job well done by them. I'm just a ride along to this whole thing. They've done an excellent job of planning this and so forth. And just the advertisement or a little commercial for MAGSA and continuing with its open book theme. We're having our board meeting next Wednesday on July 7th, returning to in-person and on July 7th in the Kerman Community Center. And we'll also hopefully be providing a continuing Zoom connection for those who can Zoom in to watch our meetings in the future. So we'll have both in-person and Zoom going forward. So hopefully you'll join us for that as well. But for tonight, clearly we want to pick up some more questions. And if not tonight, let's get them in through all of the different vehicles that we've provided for you. Thank you.
Okay, so we did get another question in. The question is, would a water right be needed to divert from the James bypass for the project?
That is a very good question. And I would like to let Matt address that one to begin with, please.
The intention of the project is to take flood flows when those are present from the Kings River off of the Kings River waterway. Generally speaking, in the state of California, that still would require some form of permit, either temporary or permit, to divert even that flood water off of there. And of course, it would have to be diverted from the watercourse with full appreciation for the senior water rights that exist on the Kings River. So these diversions would be effectively water which is not otherwise going to be utilized for beneficial use. All excellent questions, by the way. Looks like the sun's going down in the west behind me there.
I was just noticing the same thing.
Either that or that's the light, and I'll be seeing you guys on the other side. Well, one or the other. You think everybody's still here? Or do you think they went and had dinner and they just forgot to turn their computer off?
Yeah. The proof is in the video.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like we still have some committed attendees on, so I'll continue to monitor the Q&A.
Okay.
And with that, we just got another question. The question is, which potential water sources would be taken in for the project? Any and all?
I'm going to ask Matt to address that question to begin.
Yeah, the project is designed to take water off of the Kings Bypass, as we just indicated. So from start to finish, the presumption is that the Kings River floodwaters would be the source of the water to divert into this project and to distribute onto the on-farm parcels. There is no real other potential water source that would come in that would be a floodwater categorization at that point. Certainly the facilities may have other uses, but for the purposes of this project, that's where the source of the water would be, is off the Kings River as floodwater.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, so a follow-up question to that. Could other waters be added aside from the Kings River?
I think the answer is the same. For purposes of this project, the source water would be floodwater coming from the Kings River and the North Fork through the James Bypass. Again, facilities are capable of being utilized in other ancillary ways, but for the purposes of this analysis and the scoping for this project, that's where our source would be.
Rebecca, it might be a good idea to go back in the slide presentation to some of the images that Phil was addressing to show the situation of the project area in relation to the James Bypass and the Kings River, if we can.
It looks like Crystal took us there.
Yes.
So we have a couple of other questions that have come in.
Mm-hmm.
Does the expansion area contain soil types suitable to high infiltration rates?
That's a very good question. And as a matter of fact, during the planning for this project, MAGSA did develop a map that shows the various levels of permeability, of soil permeability. and found that much of the area, particularly in the east, has relatively high permeability. I'm not going to say much more about it than that, but I will ask Matt and Phil to address that question.
The answer is yes. We have done some initial studies on that, and we've identified some of the areas at the terminus of the extended canal that we have identified here in blue as being some of the better, if not the best, soils for infiltration within the MAGSA boundary proper, and certainly within the project area.
And I'll add a little to that. We've done studies on utilizing on-farm recharge for recharge if that's the method used on some of these high rate soils. And our studies show that you can get about on appropriate soils, you can get near a foot a day of recharge, 10 inches to 12 inches a day, depending on how the calculations are done. So you know, that's what we would be targeting, these high rate areas, looking at these soils and what we've looked at it in phase one, as well as in preparation for this project. It looks like we may be able to get that at those soils that Matt's talked about.
I think we have a question that followed up to that, Rebecca, right?
Yes, great. Thank you all. I want to make sure everyone kind of had a chance to conclude their thoughts on that. So the next question is, clogging of soils is often a concern. What was the experience in phase one of keeping the farm soils efficient in infiltrating the floodwaters?
Phil?
David, I'll take that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what one would expect on this on-farm recharge is you might get infiltration waters for about 2 to 3 months. Phase one showed that on the soils that we had over there, we were generally able to maintain similar rates of once you got past the first few days, maybe week, in which your soil profile was getting wetted and those pores generally filled. After that, it leveled out, and we maintained our rates for 20 to 30 days at a time. Those were the longest periods of flooding we had at one time continuously under phase one. I think it's important when you think about on-farm recharges, that those soils are being worked all the time have been worked during flooding. If they have no-till practices going on, they probably have some kind of planting or vegetation that's in there to help with keeping soils permeable. And they've been prepared in this area initially to break up confining layers underneath them. So there's a lot of advantages, and a lot of the work on maintaining the soils has been done ahead of time.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, so we have another question here. Will the east end of the project intertie into Consolidated Irrigation District or the Riston Canal?
I'll go with that one. As you can see on the graphic, the terminus, as indicated right now, based upon design budget and so forth, is considerably short of the area where an intertie with either one of those canals would be possible. It's a couple more miles. This is a 12.25 mile canal in blue. Probably be another 2 to 2.5 miles to reach the eastern end. So this project does not anticipate connecting to either one of those facilities. But this, again, as I indicated before, the existing conveyance, once it's complete, could be part of additional projects, which could in fact include those possibilities. It's just not designed into this particular project. We would like to do all things with the amount of money we have. Unfortunately, the economy doesn't allow for that.
Thanks, Matt.
Great question. When will it rain again?
Matt, you got an answer for that one?
I used to tell my kids, they used to ask me, how tall am I going to be? I said, you're going to be as tall as you're supposed to be. I suppose it's going to rain again when it's supposed to rain again. I don't want to go drifting off into the weeds of philosophy and the like, but I suppose when the situation's right, we will have precipitation. That's all I can say. But we will be planned for and ready for it. So next time we won't be caught off guard. Next time we'll be ready to take the maximum advantage of those flows when they come.
Right. Okay. So another question here. Are cropping patterns of the expansion area suitable for OFR?
Who's going to tackle that? Matt or Phil?
Well, my answer would be yes, but I'll let Phil give you the more detailed answer to that question.
Yeah, so we've conducted an OFR in a variety of crops. It includes nut crops, includes tomatoes, it includes vineyards. And so in short, yes, and that's not all the entire list. The advantage of having different crops out there is that you can rotate OFR between the different parcels depending on what the different crops might need at a certain time for their management. So yes, and it's good that we have different crops.
I'm still smiling about when will it rain again question. I'll tell you, that was a great question. I must say, anonymous attendee, whoever you are, you ask very, very good questions. Thank you for participating as you have.
Hopefully you won't have to ask that same question during the public review period in early fall.
I hope I'll have to answer, how come you haven't gotten this done yet? And why aren't we taking in all this rain we're taking in right now? So why are those floodwaters passing us by? That'll be a good problem to have. Moderation in all things, though. We don't need too much. All right, 14 so far. That's better than it looked like we were going to start with. So fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good response.
I noted, I think at one point at the high point, steady point, there were about 40 total participants, including the panelists. So that's just an excellent response. Really appreciate the time and the energy it takes to kind of watch these things, and really appreciate the interest in this project. I think it's a pretty good project, and we're hoping to, get it done on time, on budget. That'd be with the help of these questions and this scoping, I think we're in the right direction.
I agree. Matt, shall we give it a few more minutes, to see if any additional questions come in?
David, we advertised this till 7:30. We only got 9 minutes. Let's hang. We got this far. Let's hang and let's make sure we don't miss anything.
All right.
Let's give it its full complement of time. Or until nobody's watching us anymore. One or the other. I'm just waiting for the pizza guy to show up, you know? Oh, we got one.
Ooh, see, just when we think it's been enough time, we get another question. So, all right, when can we break ground for the project?
Well, we can break ground when we're ready to break ground, but the preliminary items that need to be checked off as were indicated on David's timeline are that both the NEPA and CEQA environmental analyses need to be complete and certified. And then the results of those environmental reviews will direct our final design. And then once we're to final design and we have approved final design, we'll begin to bid the project. And then we'll hopefully be looking at construction on our current timeline sometime in perhaps as early as the fall of next year, if all goes well. The beauty about this project is that the phase one is already in place. And so even if early rains were to come that slowed down this part of the project, we can still potentially take advantage of flood flows that might generate and get those out onto the phase one of the project. And then of course, follow along with the expansion portion as quickly as we can. Expect that the total construction on this will probably last somewhere in the neighborhood of a year to do everything we need to do. So hopefully we'll be fully complete and ready for receipt of any floodwaters that would be occurring in the 22, would that be the 23-24 year. I don't know, I'm starting to look at the anonymous attendee and it's starting to echo in my head, Notorious B.I.G., you know, an anonymous attendee and Notorious B.I.G. We got a birth of a new character there. I love it. And I'm old and I know who that is.
You still know who that is. I'm impressed, man.
Hey, well, I got kids.
You've got kids. I was just going to say you must have kids.
Yep.
They might not ever want to share their name now, Matt.
Oh no, it's going to be one of my favorites after this. Anybody asks, who's your favorite participant? Anonymous attendee. I love them. Or her, or them. Could be a whole group, you know. You just never know who's asking those questions. That's why they're anonymous. Crystal's still hanging in there.
Ooh, there's the proof.
Yep.
The slides are moving.
Crystal, do you want to go back and over the last couple of minutes here, you want to review real quickly again what all the possible ways for these folks who are remaining, these stalwart 9 or 10 folks who are still watching and listening, to let them remind them of all the many ways that you and Crystal and Rebecca have established lines of communications to MAGSA?
Sure. Sorry, I was frozen, so I thought I had to signal you somehow, so I used the slide. Yeah, so there are different ways to comment. Actually, I'm going to go to this slide because this is the one where how we're going to get comments from you. You can go online to mcmullin.org/OFR. And there's email there, or you can just directly put email in comments@mcmullinarea.org. You can mail or hand deliver during business hours. There is a box sitting on the reception area at MAGSA. It's anonymous. You can drop comments in there or mail them there. And also, again, if you want to just stay up to date on the project and you're not available to provide comments or you don't have any comments, if you sign up on our email list, we'll be sending out updates on a regular basis, so you can kind of follow along and see what's going on. And we'd like to have people follow us on Twitter, so follow us. We'll send you good information there too. And with that, again, those are our email address, our phone number, and our website. That's what I have, Matt.
You did good. You did good, as usual. The best.
Thank you, Crystal.
We are extremely lucky to have you two ladies assisting us this evening, that's for sure.
I agree.
Our pleasure.
So I've done quite a few scoping meetings over my career, and I've been at some scoping meetings where we didn't get any attendees. And usually if we get 10 attendees, we think we're doing pretty good. Sounds like we got substantially more than that tonight, which tells us that there is a lot of public interest in this project, which is a very good thing. And it tells us that we are going to have to be very detailed in our analysis and make sure that we address everyone's concerns. I'd like to echo what Matt said, that there were a lot of really good questions tonight, and definitely a lot of things for us to think about. So again, we really appreciate you're taking the time to participate in this scoping session tonight. This is sort of the essence of public involvement, and this is the reason we do these scoping meetings. So thanks again for participating. Matt, do you have any closing comments?
Well, it's 7:30, and I'm going to say thank you to the panel, thank you to the participants, and good evening.
Thanks very much. Good night.
See you next time.